Well, people don't know about Celia, or haven't known about her. And part of that is that she was a person who was behind the scenes. She chose that role. She did it really, really well. And she was the person who set things up. She was the person who later made sure that Fidel's uniforms were pressed and well sewn and, all that sort of thing. She seemed to want that role. And that's one answer. Another way to look at it, too, which is equal, is she's very protected in Cuba. She's admired, but she is such she's considered to be such a hero and such a precious person that, in a way, a lot of people don't really want to take on that and speak of her in such dramatic terms. That I don't think that always lends itself to biographies either, when people were very, very precious. I happened to just discover her from so many different reactions that I would have from people in Cuba when I was doing my other books. And then she was a big architectural patron. She was behind. The last thing that she did was the big convention center. And I mean, right away I thought, what kind of woman can be the developer? What do you have to do to build this very, very big building in a communist society? And then I just went backward. Well, she did this, and then I met an architect who had worked for her, and she was a woman of enormous power. Her name came up when I was doing my first book for Rizzoli, which was basically documenting architecture. And I was doing it in the special period when things were really tough. So I decided to look at, everything, neighborhoods, ice cream parlors, all those things. And so suddenly there were these things that were I would say, well, who was the developer? Because I really didn't understand then entirely that the government was the developer on most of the things. So people would answer it was the revolution or the Castro government. But then I started to realize that, architects had worked with her. So that was the first thing, and then I realized that Lennon Park was really built by her. That's huge. I mean, it's bigger than Central Park. It's sort of, so her name was there. And so then when I went in to do the second book, and the huge Cohiba cigar factory was really organized by her, I thought, I can't believe this. It's extremely interesting. And then you go to this Cohiba factory, which is this beautiful old villa that's been requisitioned. But carefully, a lot of those places in Cuba where the government sort of takes them over, they seem to sort of sit. Nobody makes any changes. So you walk into this Cohiba cigar factory, and it still has a lot of the furniture from, when they took it over in 1961 or whatever that time is. So anyway, the fact is that there is a big portrait of her. And it really wasn't, so I really started to think, this is too much. And I talked to my editor in Rizzoli too. And he said that yes, they can do books when a person is connected to a large figure and it represented history. And so it doesn't have to be entirely about the greatest pieces of architecture, but represents a moment in history. And so anyway, we were beginning to talk about it, and I was beginning to think about her. And very carefully ask questions. But I was finishing up my work, and I was in a very out-of-the-way cigar factory because I had found an old telephone book that listed them, so I went. It was in Marianao. And they were very surprised to have me show up. But I was always carrying a letter from the historian of the city of Havana, the old city, Eusebio Leal. And he has a very popular television program every Saturday where he walks through the city. Everybody loves this program. So they were really resistant to say, no, you don't have any point here, go away, because they were sort of charmed to have this letter that seemed to be personally, can you help this woman out? So they said, okay, but, wait. So they had to assemble several men. There were 5, and I have to say I don't remember all their positions, but certainly they had a production that would be on the floor, because when I went in there, I disturbed everybody to some degree. So I think that coming along with that would be probably the head of the party, who would have been in each factory. So the production, there were 5 men. But we did assemble, and we went to a little conference room, and there was a little podium. And so somebody got up and started to talk about, the history of the cigar industry and so on. And I had a translator. It wasn't Argelio. It was from Eusebio Leal's office. He actually appointed someone. So I was really thinking, when is this guy going to finish talking? And so there was a part of me that interrupted him, and there was another part of me that was totally shocked. So it was not, there was some sincerity here when he brought up Celia's name. So I said, stop, wait a minute, now tell me again, who she is. I think I said that because I was just kind of shocked, right? So he said, you don't know? So I do. And so, but I said, but tell me, really stop and tell me, because she's so interesting. So they did that thing that Cubans do. They all, when something is important, they take a sort of silent vote. And these men looked at each other, and then they sort of selected, just with their eyes, one person. And this guy came up, and then he started to talk about her. And it was so emotional, maybe not for him, but for me, because he talked about how things were so sad at the end of the revolution, because there were so many people that were widows or without jobs, or because they were maids and the families were leaving, and how she really stepped in to try to do whatever she could to find jobs for women. And that is, in fact, and that there were many jobs that had always been held by men. Women worked in cigar factories, but they were never able to get the good jobs, which is the rolling. And so, but before he talked about that, he really talked about how she was trying to protect Fidel and Che. So she was, making sure that they had safe food and safe cigars. And, I looked at them, and they were just transformed. They weren't tough old cigar-smoking men in the first place, but they were all managers, although they don't use that word, I think, in the communist system. But they were toughies. And they had been in that room sort of, she's here, let's do this job, but, they became totally changed. And I was hooked.